The first session today, the next session will be, where's Bregtje gone? Oh, hello. Has been curated and will be moderated by the filmmaker Bregtje van der Haak, and the whole of this next session will be concerning how we might organize in new versions of urbanism post-crisis or coming out of crisis. I'm not going to say anything more about it. Bregtje is going to take over from me, and I'd like to thank the speakers in advance.
Thank you. Miguel said a new day. He said we need to generate solutions that are accessible to everyone. Adri said self-organization is key to sustainable urban development. I heard that today. We saw the Mad Housers. I also read we need a flexible framework that can accommodate bottom-up. So I think we have 3 people here who have some ideas about how we could start to do that. Arno finished his last session with the question mark. We need to think about how and where to go from here. I think that's what everybody is doing. And I'm very happy to introduce 4 speakers who have some experiences not in New York, not in Amsterdam, not in Almere, but in California, in Los Angeles notably, and in Spain with the Indignados movement and the alternative economic culture in Catalonia. And in this session, we would like to explore the aftermath of this economic crisis. I don't think it's post-crisis. I think we're in a crisis. But it's a crisis that opens a lot of new possibilities, possibly an exceptional historical moment that opens up possibilities to fundamentally reorganize the way in which we live together. But are we going back to the future, living in tents? Are we crashing into the wall? Are we racing into a new dimension? What do we need to do to make the best of this potential powerful moment of transformation? First, I would like to invite filmmaker Joana Conill. Joana, good to we met during the work on my last film. Actually, all of us met in that situation. And Joana is a filmmaker and a researcher working closely with Amalia Cardoso, who is a researcher, and they both work at the Open University in Catalonia. Cardenas. And they're going to present the work they have done with Manuel Castells at the Interdisciplinary Institute.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to apologize for my English. I'm from Spain, and my English is also from Spain. We would like to thank the SKOR Foundation for inviting us to this event. In particular, we would like to thank Bregtje, Fulia, Andrea, Vesna, and Michelle. We are really happy to be here. My name is Joana Conill, and this is my colleague and friend Amalia Cárdenas. We are researchers at the IN3 Institute at the University of Catalonia in Barcelona. Our research team is formed of 4 people, Manuel Castells and Lisa Servon, who could not be here. We want to start this talk by inviting you to draw a picture of your dream home. We would like to work in a participatory way. This is not always possible, but at least we would like you to have a participatory experience during this lecture. At the end, we would like to collect your drawings, and this will permit us to continue researching needs and desires. Not frames, because we have to put it on the suitcase, but in a paper. We are happy to be a part of a rich debate in which housing is viewed from different points of view, from those of planners, artists, designers, politicians, activists, researchers. We feel that generally housing is viewed in an isolated manner, but by bringing together this holistic view, we can better understand that behind housing models there are people, behind politics there are people, and behind economies there are people. By understanding this key point, we will be able to change situations so that people can live in a better way. Sustainable housing is really important to create, But sustainable housing moves beyond energy-saving mechanisms and ethical relationships with the environment. If people who live in these projects don't have a sustainable relationship with contractors, with neighbors, with landlords, with themselves, it cannot be sustainable, efficient, ethical housing. What we are talking about here is cultural values, and this is the point of view we want to provide to the debate. We have been studying alternative economic cultures for 3 years. What we understand by alternative economic practices are practices made by people, of course, that do not follow the market pattern in the sense that the main goal is non-profit searching, but are instead satisfy the needs and desires of people. This is Max Smith's theory of necessities. We are not going to discuss it in depth, but we just want to highlight 2 things. First, people's needs are not infinite. They are limited and concrete. And interestingly enough, throughout human history, they have not changed. Second, only the subsistence category passes through the capitalist market. The other needs don't. This is the universe of alternative economic practices that we study. These are practices that exist in Catalonia, and we have studied them since 2009. We have observed that these non-capitalist economies are possible because they are supported by a culture that is innovative. It's innovative because it proposes to break with the conventional cultural roots. The world is structurally unsustainable, violent, and unjust. And this culture tries to change the world from unsustainable to sustainable. It tries to form relationships of violence to those of solidarity, and from injustice to justice. We don't have time to expose all the values underlying this culture, so we have chosen to take a deep look at 4 values so that you can get an idea of what we mean by culture.
The 4 values that we're going to describe is 1, the value of things, or what some people call use value. The second value is the new culture of work, or what some would call the hacker's ethic. The third value is the value of cooperation, and lastly, we're going to talk about creativity. So this picture represents use value. Most of the time, when we think about price, or we associate price with value, but who determines prices? Currently, the market does. This may seem like a very simplistic question, but what is the value of things? For example, what's worth more, this pitcher of water here or this colorful pen that I brought with me? Her beautiful green shirt, or, I don't know, these pair of glasses. Have we ever thought about how much is our car worth in shoes, for example? What I have at home and I don't use has absolutely no value, but what I need has a lot of value. This is what we understand by use value. In an exchange market, there's no money, there are no prices. So who determines the value in an exchange market? 2 people who have concrete needs and who arrive at an agreement for that specific exchange. For example, in Catalonia, the market does not recognize an older woman who knows how to sew, but in an exchange market, these women are very valued because they have a skill that has been completely lost, but a lot of us need. This dynamic empowers women, ladies who know how to sew. We want to show how this use value is reflected in housing. In Barcelona, there are currently 80,000 empty flats and 3.1 million in Spain. Whole urbanizations, such as the one above, are completely empty. This is located in Toledo, Spain. If nobody is using these homes, What value do they have? In Catalonia, we have an association called Sospecific that promotes a new approach to housing based on a use cooperative model. In these models, the ownership of the property always resides in the hands of the cooperative, and the members who participate in the cooperative enjoy the right of an indefinite use of the dwelling through a soft rent payment. The members are not owners of the property, but they enjoy a right to use the property as long as they have a need. This is an important shift in logic. Apart from being an ethical choice, being part of a cooperative is the only way to pay the real price of housing in Spain currently. In the Sospecific model, the cooperation doesn't dissolve after handing over the housing units. They remain active and keep part of the ownership of the homes, which prevents these homes from entering the market, and this helps avoid speculation. In Sospecific, it's a non-profit organization. Of course, they make a profit to continue to expand the services that they offer, but unlike real estate firms whose main goal is to maximize profits, Sospecific puts a cap on the amount of profit that they can make, and by doing this, they can offer prices that are closer to the real value of 600 euros per square meter. As you know, in Spain, we have a deep problem caused by housing speculation, which has inflated the cost of building to 2,200 square meters. The use cooperative model shows that the value of things can be better calculated if we ask ourselves what our needs are first.
I think that nobody is drawing. You don't want to participate? Eh?
Paper.
You don't have paper. There's a lot of paper inside of the bags, no? And the other value is the new culture of work. The culture of work has been central in the industrial society, the society where the majority of the mature and aged sectors of the Catalan population grew up. We ran 8 focus groups in the spring of 2011 to capture the discourse of specific segments of the population. One of the focus groups was composed entirely of retired people. They defended strongly the culture of work, not only as a necessary economic practice, but also as a moral principle. The influence of the work ethic goes beyond those of older age to influence the younger group engaged in conscious alternative economic practices. Their identifying characteristic is that they do not make a distinction between paid work and unpaid work. The key distinction for them is between rewarding work that has a creative or enjoyable component and imposed, boring work that is done as a way to survive. Pekka Himanen calls this new culture of works the hacker ethic. They see work as an expression of their choice and their autonomy, not meaningless work sometimes equated to slavery. The majority of those who consciously engage in alternative practices, or what we call the transformatives, seem to have the capacity to obtain skilled jobs or flexible working time. They are self-programmable workers. This self-programmable quality is actually the same set of capabilities required to operate self-managed networks on which alternative cultures are based. Many of these people are educated enough to have a well-paid job. However, they have made a conscious choice not to take such a job because it would limit their autonomy and free time. For the transformatives, the key rationale is that one should start by defining the real economic needs, rather than going into an endless spiral of consumption where new needs always appear as a result of enticement in the market. Thus, they proceed to cut unnecessary spending, and as a result, they do not need to earn so much and they can find flexible jobs that allow time to live. Their discourse is constructed on the relationship between the consciousness of their needs and the satisfaction of the needs that are worthy for them. Rather than starting for consumer preferences, as in the market logic, they start with life preferences and organize their needs accordingly. Needs determine how much money they need and how much they value free time. We want to give you an example of how this new culture of work is reflected in housing. Just to give you a brief statistic to think about, in Spain, young people spend 42% of their wage on rent. But there are ways to cut this expense down. For example, in Canamat, the tenants have a contract that was very typical in Spain, not so much now, but it's called masovería rural. In exchange for fixing the property, the tenants are given free rent. These houses tend to be in rural areas with an abundance of land. Tenants take advantage of the land to cultivate for self-consumption. They also typically have eggs and make bread. A small portion of this cultivation is sold. The tenants are able to live with 200 euros a month. How do they do this? By not having to pay rent and with the excess of production that they sell. This allows them not to have to be forced to work in a job they don't like. Here we observe that there is no difference between a job and work. One is remunerated and the other is not. In addition, this example shows what it means to work for the others.
Next, we want to talk about the value of cooperation. When we talk about cooperation, we mean that you give more importance to the relationship between people than to money. In the practices that we have studied, we have seen that there's a new type of relationship forming that allows people to give ways to new forms of organizing. This concept can better be explained through the term prosumer. A prosumer is both a consumer and a producer. We're not only consumers. Each one of us has a part that is also a producer. It's important to highlight this because the relationship between consumer and producer, which is the relationship that is most spread in our society today, is a violent relationship. The consumer always wants the lowest price, and the producer wants to get the maximum price possible. This will always produce an outcome where one wins and the other loses. Usually we identify ourselves as consumers because we live in a consumption-based society, and because our work doesn't have a direct relationship with the final product. As a result, the part of us that is a consumer is hyper-developed. For example, we can identify brands, the best places to shop, what the best products are, but we have atrophied our part as producers. We don't identify ourselves as people able to produce things and offering services that are of use to others. One of the most common things that we hear in exchange markets are people who say, I don't have anything to exchange because I don't know how to do anything. We live in the information society and in one of the most educated generations of all time. How is it that people don't know how to do things? To think of ourselves as prosumers enables us to develop the producer side of us, which has atrophied. What innovative value does thinking of ourselves as prosumers offer? It allows us to change from an economy that is based on violent relationships to an economy that is based on solidarity. How is this? When two prosumers meet, they identify themselves as equals, and they try to find a way to satisfy their needs by cooperating and thus forming relationships of solidarity. And new relationships have the capacity to create new economies. One important thing to keep in mind is that these networks all work and all jobs are valued equally. A doctor is not more important than a homemaker because what we value here are people's times and what each person contributes and has to offer. An example of how this cooperation and prosumer idea can be seen in housing is how the old contracts of rural masoveria adapt to a new context of crisis. It's called urban masoveria. In Catalonia, there are many property owners who cannot rent their properties because they can't afford to fix them. Lately, a lot of arrangements have been occurring where the landowner offers a house for very little rent or free sometimes in exchange for the tenants repairing and fixing the property. This is an example of a solidarity relationship with both parties winning. They have a mutual understanding. In this case, there's not a producer who offers something and a consumer who takes, but both parties have needs and both have the capacity to offer. The landowner needs work done on the property and he offers his house in exchange. The tenant needs a home and offers to work in exchange. The current way, this is really important. I just thought about this, and if you take anything from this whole lecture, take this. In the current way that life is organized, you always live in scarcity. Why? Because you can only have as much as you can buy with money. But in alternative economics networks, you always live in abundance, because you always have as much as you're willing to give. This is why it's important to develop our producer sides and be able to do things so that we can offer things to others. It's not as easy as it appears, and we're not going to paint a utopian vision. In fact, cooperation is the most difficult thing about this new culture. Violence is well rooted in our culture, and understanding others and coming to an agreement with others is very difficult. The number one reason why projects fail is due to human conflict. Not because a house falls apart or the gardens don't grow, but human conflicts. That's why associated with all of these practices, you see a proliferation of conflict resolution methods and participation methodologies, which you're all partaking in now.
Creativity. Why is creativity important in these projects? It's important because it is what makes these projects possible. They create relationships within members of their group, and they are in permanent contact with other groups and other people. This is really unique feature on this type of housing. It's not just a house you are living in, but a network. This is very different from other models of housing, where you live in a building and might never know who your neighbors are. In occupied social centers, for example, a diverse set of social movements, feminist, free radios, artistic projects come together. They also open up to the community and exchange knowledge with other members of distinct social movements. Thus, they become meeting points for diverse ideas, activities, organizations, and this allows for ideas to be more permeable. It's important to highlight that when we talk about ideas, we are not talking about recipes. We are not showing recipes, but different logics and patterns. Recipes lead to the repetition of the same model. Patterns give way to a diversity of models, and this is fundamental in terms of networks, because sustainable networks are based on diversity. That makes them rich. An example of creativity, look at this video. 5 containers serve to house a family, and in addition, it serves to house the players of an open source video game that explores new ways of living when they need to physically meet. It's in Vic, in the north of Catalonia.
One of the mysteries in a society that is in deep crisis is the relative stability that it has. This is due to a large part because people's lives and their economic practices do not follow the rules of the capitalist market. It has always been this way, but the dynamics increases with a crisis. Many people have found pleasure in forms of economic practices that are based on human relationships, practices that affirm the value of life before money. We did a representative survey of the population of Barcelona just to see how widespread these practices were. And the most interesting finding was that It's okay. So the most interesting finding was that 97% of the population of Barcelona engages in at least one of these activities. And the mean number of activities that people engage in were 6.2 practices. If so many people are living a part of their lives outside of the market, just maybe we're witnessing a change in culture. Cultural changes begin in the mind. When your mind changes, your life changes. And when the life of so many people change, cultures change. And cultures lead to new economies. In the middle of conducting our research, the indignant movement exploded in Spain. Many of the people that we had been studying and observing were actively participating in the movement, including Joana and I. Together with thousands of people, we were affirming that we had lost all fear. As a consequence of the movement, one of the most popular actions that has developed in Spain is the stopping of evictions, and it's working. We want to leave you with a final thought. We have affirmed that cultural changes create new economies. So can cultural changes also create new forms of politics? While you meditate on this thought, we want to show you some clips from the documentary that we made to start a research project. Most of the economies that we have spoken about were not known by the majority of the population of Barcelona, so we wanted to get their reaction, and we thought the best way to do this was to show them in a documentary film and then to test and see what their reactions were. In addition, we made this video to contribute to the visibility of these economies. The name of the documentary is called Homage to Catalonia 2. We'll give you the address after the presentation if you want to see the full video. It's licensed under Creative Commons, and thanks to viral diffusion, it has spread without the need to promote it. So we're thinking that maybe we invite you to be pirate emitters as well. We're going to show 2 descriptive chapters and 1 analytical chapter, and then finally the conclusion.
People are adopting new forms of urban living. Fiare and Co-op 57 are among the members of a Catalan network of ethical finances and financial solidarity.
El negoci, entre cometes, de COP57 és molt senzill. Obtenir diner dels seus socis per deixar-lo als seus socis en unes condicions.
Facing the housing crisis, some people are adopting new forms of urban living. Sospecific is an association that promotes housing cooperatives.
Sospecific va començar així, és a dir, com un grup de gent que no li agradava ni els preus de l'habitatge, ni com et feien dissenyar l'habitatge, ni les formes d'accés.
The cooperative has the ownership of the building, and its members can live in the premises indefinitely, paying an affordable rent.
Entendre l'habitatge com un bé d'ús, no? com un valor que allò té un valor o té una possessió mentre es faci servir.
This association collaborates with public administration, with associations, and with cooperatives, giving advice on projects of housing self-management, rehabilitation, urban farming, eco-villages, and sustainable energy. Can Carcas is a farm near Barcelona. Irene and Anna were looking for a farm where they could live. Joan was the owner of a farmhouse in the village of Franquesas del Valle, but did not have the money to pay for its rehabilitation.
Volíem nosaltres intentar de restaurar-la una miqueta, però la cosa no estava massa clara perquè costava molts diners i el que ens costava no haguéssim pogut cobrar de lloguer, no?
And so Joan, Irene, and Anna made an agreement. The women would repair and maintain the farm, and Joan leased the property to them with a very low rent. Now the farm is home for Irene, Anna, Berta, Sergi, and Espi. They all work in the rehabilitation of the farm, sharing their skills. They used to recycle materials in their construction work.
Hemos reciclado parquet, que tenemos un vecino, bueno, nos las da, y entonces vamos montando las habitaciones a medida que nos van llegando los trozos.
Sempre pots anar compartint, aprenent i d'alguna manera enriquint-te amb tot el que l'entorn.
I el fet de poder compartir íntimament amb un col·lectiu de gent, clar, això t'enriqueix, no? Perquè a vegades sembla que només podem tenir intimitat amb la parella.
I ara, clar, quan passes per aquí la nit i veus la llum a cada finestra, et fa molta il·lusió.
Canamad is the home of Joan, Maxime, Nuria, and Marguerite. They have a contract with their landlord. They live in the farm and in exchange share their harvest with the landlord.
Bueno, es el típico contrato así histórico, digamos, en Cataluña, de alguien que tenía una tierra, una finca y disponía nuevamente una familia que vivía a cambio de dar una parte de la producción y cuidar los terrenos y hacer una gestión del lugar.
La idea es de intentar producir todo lo que tengo a casa.
They also sell eggs and their homemade bread to make money to buy what they cannot produce themselves.
Sí, para mí también es esencial convivir.
La convivencia es un arte por descubrir.
As everywhere else, urban orchards are growing throughout the metropolitan area of Barcelona. Some are communal orchards, others are vegetable gardens that people plant in their homes. There are over 20 communal farms and orchards in the city of Barcelona, most of them of recent creation. One of them is l'Hortet del Ferrat, located in the Ribera neighborhood.
Y al principio era como que costaba muchísimo que la gente entendiera para qué era eso.
Està dintre d'un territori una mica conflictiu.
Yo he visto que cada vez están un poco más cuidadosos con el huerto.
Jo vaig ser un dels que vaig pensar, bueno, doncs tu ho trenques, jo ho torno a fer, i a veure qui aguanta més.
No sé, se habló de hacer actividades con los niños del barrio y vinieron como unos 60 niños en un día.
The orchard of La Salle is at the town of Santa Maria de Polatodera.
No buscamos un rendimiento alto, buscamos más quizás calidad, ¿no? Y donde se encuentran, no sé, los que tienen las mismas inquietudes, sobre todo en alimentación.
No prima tant la producció, tot i que és important perquè estem en un hort, prima més el que és el sentiment aquest de grup, no?
The communal orchard of the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona is located in the university campus.
No tothom sap, no algú sap de tot, sinó tots sabem una miqueta i entre tots ens anem ajudant i anem fent perquè surti bé l'hort.
Pierre has created an orchard in the terrace of his home in the Guenardo neighborhood.
Està tot petitet, com podeu veure. Arribo en aquesta casa on tinc un espai tan gran, doncs penso, mira, aquí puc anar posant plantetes. Aquest sol és el que jo faig, això és el compost. Ho he anat aprenent sobre la marxa i amb l'observació i aplicant el sentit comú. Les que són més grans són les que quasi totes, de fet, les he trobat pels carrers de Barcelona.
Home, perquè és un primer pas cap a un canvi.
No tot és el que et donen o veus a la tele, sinó que hi ha coses molt més senzilles que comentaven, que és el que potser t'ha omplert més.
Des de ben petita sempre tenia la sensació que vivim en una societat on, no sé, vius en una casa però com que tot està molt predeterminat, llavors, no sé, tenia la sensació de dir però és que jo tinc ganes de construir la meva casa amb les meves mans, no?
Perquè la gent sàpiga respectar un dels altres.
Suposo que busco d'una manera ja ho tinc a dintre, no? Que és la no conformitat amb el que em venen com el que ha de ser la meva vida.
Te das cuenta que habías perdido por el camino muchas cosas importantísimas, básicas para el ser humano.
Feina a casa, casa feina. No em conformo, no m'agrada.
Bueno, Freud diria que és culpa de la meva mare.
Però... Realment a mi el que m'aporta és d'entendre de com gastar-me els diners d'una forma més ètica.
Quan veu un sentiment que li produeix una injustícia o una situació que no li agrada, doncs intenta canviar.
Que es pot tenir una relació molt més directa amb el que un es porta a la boca, no?
Que no visquem en un lloc on no sabem d'on ven les coses, ¿no?
Cuando necesitas cuidar de tu hijo, pero no vas a tener tiempo y lo ves, pues es cuando te lo planteas.
Pues suposo que m'agrada.
Bueno, yo me siento realizada con ello, ¿no?
Aportar algo y apoyar a cambiar la situació.
Prefereixo, saps, estimar-me algú que no pas estar sempre enfadat amb la gent i haver de mantenir, saps, uns hàbits emocionals fins i tot negatius, ¿no?
Pero a veces yo misma me desespero de ver un montón de gente con un montón de ideas perdida en su discusión, en su debate, en su pequeña diferencia.
Una cosa tan simple com la germanor, no? O sigui, el sentir que formes part d'una família.
Y poder ayudar a la gente a no perderse en todo esto, ¿no? Y avanzar y hacer cosas.
O cada cop que ens reunim allà a les 15 per assajar, simplement això, ja notes una força molt gran.
Entendre que podem viure d'una altra manera.
Viure en un món on tot és fàcil, no?
Que al final nosotros estamos normalizando lo anormal.
No? Mentre tu ets víctima només, doncs pots dir que el sistema no sé què, que hi ha un altre que t'ha agredit, que tal... Però en el moment en què tu prens consciència, no només veus el que t'està fent l'altre o el que està fent el sistema, sinó que veus el que tu pots fer també, no? La teva parcel·la de poder.
No hay nada, ¿no? Vale. Gracias.
La chuga dentro de caja de plástico sin cuello.
Oh, perfecto.
Gracias. Mira, te has preguntat aquí,
Joana and Amalia, thank you very much. I have one question. To what extent is this specific to Catalonia, what we have seen? Maybe Amalia?
No, this is a network and it exists worldwide, so it's not just content specific to Barcelona. And also a lot of these practices were pre-existing before the crisis, so it's not as a reaction to the crisis, but as a reaction to a system. But we think that they'll increase as the crisis gets more severe.
And some of these things look like they have been around for a long time, forever. Last week we met also in Barcelona for a very inspiring meeting about technology and the M15 movement in Spain. To what extent does technology make a difference? We didn't see much technology in these clips and in your presentation about values. To what extent does technology play a role? You are allowed to speak as individual.
So, yes, technology plays a very big role in spreading these things because these things spread in a network, but we have to remember that networks are both physical and present online and offline. So technology helps expand these things, but there's a very physical, real-world presence also. And because these networks are not centralized, they're very decentralized, and they work with the same logic as online environments, so that's why they're expanding so quickly.
I think there is probably many questions, but I propose that first we look at Laura's presentation, Laura Burkhalter. She's an architect that I met in Los Angeles when working on a documentary about how people were dealing with the crisis in Los Angeles. And she's also using technology to try to promote the same values that Amalia and Joana were talking about to some extent. So please welcome Laura Burkhalter.
Thank you. First, I would like to share with all of you that actually the project I'm about to present first crystallized as an idea for me while I was watching Homage to Catalonia 2 last spring in Los Angeles. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here and present this right after that presentation. How do I click forward here? There you go. The project was born out of a desire for a systematic celebration of these communities of practice that are out there really experimenting and spearheading new ways of working, living, and being in the world, really for the benefit of all of us. On the other hand, it came from an equal desire to create a bond between all these groups and a toolbox that would help everyone along the way. As we just found out from Amalia and Joana's presentation, alternative communities of practice are actually more common than mainstream media has us believe. And especially now in the last few years, as the system has failed more and more people, and the perpetual cycle of consumption and distraction has significantly shrunk, more and more people are looking for ways to make more meaningful and sustainable lives. Contrary to popular belief, a lot of people actually have a lot of desire to make a difference in the world. A lot of new research has shown that, and it is actually consistent with my own experience. And many people are tired of the old system. And a lot of these people have actually really great ideas that would greatly improve their own lives and their communities. Many people have brilliant ideas, in fact. Only there is one problem. When people go about realizing their ideas, they're all faced with one really major hurdle, which is that there's really no structures in place to pursue these types of ideas. There are a lot of structures that will guide you along in creating projects that are within the current system, which is really why the system is what it is. But if you want to do something outside of these generally accepted bounds, you must be a trailblazer. And being a trailblazer is often difficult, it's exhausting, and you will feel alone. You'll have to overcome a lot of hurdles, a lot of which you cannot always overcome by yourself. Not everyone is as buff as this guy. And you will be faced with a lot of doubt and resistance. At this point, many people give up, not because they don't believe in the power of their ideas, but simply because the upward battle is too overwhelming and they feel too alone in it. Still, as we've seen in the previous presentation, the people who go on are still a sizable number of people. But can you imagine what our world would look like if as many as 10%, 20%, 50%, or even more of the people who really have a passion to make a difference were actually following through with their visions? I think it could be a pretty spectacular world. How could this possibly be done? This is a question I've been pondering myself for quite some time. Historically, we know that movements in one place were typically started with the help of people who were part of similar movements in other places. This knowledge transfer has been a key ingredient for success for most movements of any size. Yet the knowledge transfer has been limited by people physically moving from one place to another. For the most part. Of course, innovation has happened in that field also, especially during the 2008 Obama campaign. A lot has been done. But as far as I'm aware of, there has not been an organized yet decentralized system for this type of knowledge transfer. To me, clearly, we need a structure of support in place in which people and resources can find and help each other, and in which people can engage in knowledge transfer to one another in a decentralized, self-organized way and in a scale that has not been possible till now. And this is how Community Thriver came about, which is, of course, a work in progress still. The idea in a nutshell is to put a structure in place that helps people and resources across the globe with a common purpose: to create meaningful and thriving communities. In other words, we're developing a connectivity platform and shared resource database for all things related to communities of practice that are making a positive impact in their communities. This Community Thriver is based on a mobile and online platform. And it connects existing live and online networks to new users and tools and gives each participant the networking power of the entire system. We're also looking to create an interface that borrows a lot from social media to make it really accessible and fun to use and easy. And we're designing it in a way that will work for everyone to play the role of their choosing. So it should work for the next revolutionary alike, as it will work for the casual Saturday afternoon activist. There's a simple guidelines for using this tool. Basically, your activities have to, in some form, make a positive impact in a community without doing so at other people's or the environment's expense. The primary interface is by default location-based to wherever you find yourself to be at that point. If you were to come to Los Angeles, to the neighborhood that we're based out of, and get on Community Thriver, you would find a map looking something like that. Each of these symbols symbolize organizations, groups, identified sites, events, proposals, and projects. And the color coding gives you a further indication of what the main activity of these activities are. There are different ways to view view the information or access the information. For example, you could go on the local news section for that same area and you would get this type of information. Or you could go on the calendar section and then further explore, the different tabs, and you could go click and find more about public art performance tonight. But instead of going into too much detail about the features, I want to walk you through 3 scenarios that will hopefully illustrate more clearly how one could use this tool. Scenario number 1 is kind of an obvious one, probably the most obvious one. It's, let's say you've moved to a new area or you're visiting and you would like to get in touch with the people and activities that interest you most. If I were here in Amsterdam, as I am, I might open the map and find myself here. I can, go check out exactly what's going on right here. Or I can do a keyword search, which might be helpful. let's say I want to find out about Occupy Amsterdam. I'll do a search, and I will find here, can you see it? Can't really see the type, huh? Sorry. I can see it fine on the screen, but not there. So anyway, on the left, you will see all the different groups. There's nothing I can do about that. Yeah. You'll see the different events and groups listed. And on the right, you'll see related media. So like, in this case, I see, live stream of Occupy LA. Occupy Amsterdam. Different articles. And let's say, oops, I went backward. Let's say I want to, on the bottom, I can see the location. Let's say I want to actually go and check out where this is. It will get me to a map and tell me exactly how I can walk there from where I am right now. And the fun thing is it'll also tell me which one of my friends who I've befriended on Community Thriver, my activist friends who are also currently actually at Occupy LA. And this might give me some extra incentive to walk over there right now. Scenario number 2, creating an event. So this is more a tool-based scenario. I'm a group or organization and I want to set up an event. Let's say I want to create a block party. Again, you can't see anything, so I'm sorry about that. It does not like my type here. So on the left, again, step 2 will be to inform myself, and I'll see all the related events on the left side that are happening in my neighborhood, and they're sorted by distance. On the right side, I'll find strategic tools that are useful to the particular search that I just made, and also help for articles. So let's say I want to do a block party. I'm going to be interested in a strategic school, for example, tools as street closures. I get directly linked to my local authority page, which explains exactly the step-by-step process to create street closures for my event. And so I can apply right from where I'm at. So the point is that all these processes can just get really streamlined and easy. And we can all be more effective. And so I can maybe also go check out related events. So let's say I want to check out this Rock the Block event, and I can find out what they're all about. And again, you can't read it, so I'm sorry. But, go quick. Okay. I can also see the, check the tools that they used, which will help me figure out exactly a map, a roadmap of what I might be doing. So the point being that I can build on other people's experiences and everyone can build on each other's experience. And we can all be more effective that way. Another little quick thing I'll just go through really quick. If I create my event, it will give me useful things like I picked November 18th date. It'll tell me all the other events that are happening in my area, and even all the followers of my group and organization are attending other events, so I can make informed decisions and so forth. Scenario number 3, I love this scenario personally. It allows me, let's say this is a site that I walk by every day on my way to work, which actually used to be the case. And every time I walk by, I think, oh God, what a waste of precious urban resource and all the great things I could be doing. So what this tool allows me to do is identify the site as a potential community improvement site. I go ahead and flag it, and I can upload some pictures, and I can fill in some preliminary site information. Has the site owner been identified? No. Land is privately owned, yes, and I have not contacted the owner. I could save this, or I can also create a proposal. In this case, I'm just going to propose a little community garden, which I happen to have a little collage for. So I see the before and after image of the site. Okay, I'm satisfied, I upload this, and then I could go through all these steps, and if I went through all these steps, it would move my proposal to a project, which would then access new sets of tools like community outreach, support building, fundraising tools, and that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to do that right now, and also I'm going to save it as open for collaboration, which means that anyone out there who likes this proposal can go and continue working on this. So it now appears here as a symbol. Other people can also create other proposals for that same site. Okay. I'm almost done. In our modern world, most of the current structures are still based on the old paradigm of the Newtonian clockwork model, on the clockwork universe. In this view of the world, we are all separate individuals, competing for the same finite resources in a survival of the fittest kind of contest. What we aim to do with Community Driver is to create a structure that is in line with a lot of contemporary research across so many disciplines that states that we are in fact all part of an intrinsically interconnected and inseparable web of life. I truly believe that all the answers, all the solutions to our current world problems are already here between us all. And in fact, every person holds a little piece of the puzzle that serves as a solution to our hundreds and millions of small and large problems. And every person, or most people, have some desire, at least, to express their own individual little piece express their own little piece. If instead of getting depressed about all the missing pieces of our puzzle, we can start linking up with other people who are also holding little pieces related to our vision, we may manage to assemble the whole picture. In doing so, we don't only get a personal sense of satisfaction. As human beings, we usually get the highest sense of purpose and fulfillment, knowing that with our realized vision, we have touched the lives of many people in a positive way. Community Driver aims to facilitate the assembly of puzzles and act as such act as a catalyst for all communities of practice out there making a difference. I believe that together we can create a world that more truly reflects humanity's ingenuity, resilience, solidarity, and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Laura, before you go, it's an app, right, that you can buy for your phone?
Yes, it's a free download. It's a free downloadable app, not yet existing, though, in progress. And it will be both on the phone and online.
Okay. Expected when?
Well, maybe 2012. I don't know when, though. I don't know. Maybe middle to end.
Thank you. We'll continue the discussion, but first we'll look at one last presentation for this session by Matthias Winger. Thank you very much, Lara. We'll to continue after. Matthias is a member of Fallen Fruit, a collective of artists, of 3 artists that work together in Los Angeles. They're based in Los Angeles, but they work all over the world. And Matthias is going to show us what the world looks like through the lens of fruit.
Hi, thank you all for persisting. It's a long day. I'd like to first mention that I'm part of a collaborative. My 2 collaborators are not here, but I want you to know who they are. This is part of our work, and I'm glad you're laughing. We began in working together in 2004 in relation to the Journal of Aesthetics, who sent us an artist's call for artist projects that dealt with a social or urban or political or civic issue, but did so in the form of proposing a solution rather than mounting a critique, however quixotic. We did the following. We decided to map what we called the public fruit of our neighborhood, which was here's a banana, although the photo's inversed. We found all the fruit that was growing either in public space or over public space, much of which was not harvested, much of which was going to waste, was fallen fruit, in fact. We took these series of photographs in which we sort of imagined ourselves as people from another planet coming to Earth to see what there was in our little neighborhood, and we wrapped ourselves in plastic rather than the fruit, which is customarily wrapped in plastic. I think it reflects a little bit of our kind of alienation at that point in the world. Yet another. So here's an example of a map. This is the triangle between our three houses. What you probably can't see, I see, you really can't see it. There are little stars that mark where the fruit is. They are very relative. Our goal, when we first started doing this, people asked if we were anarchists setting up maps for looters. You can see the stars better here. That is not the case. The maps are very negotiated. If a homeowner asked us to take their tree off, we would do so. We also started looking, this is in Linz, Austria for Ars Electronica. We started doing this around the world. This is in Cali, Colombia. If you notice, our mapping we became interested in mapping itself, and we started finding shapes in neighborhoods that somehow, that's very Austrian to me, but that somehow were more dynamic than the rational grid. And even in this case, where this is in Mexico, with a rational grid, we actually try to offset it in some way. So our object is fruit, in particular public fruit. So you find this particularly growing everywhere in Los Angeles. This is a grapefruit tree, quite out in public space. Color is funky, but these are delicious grapefruit. This is a banana. Behind it is an avocado. Behind that is a persimmon. They're all on the sidewalk. I hope you can see. These are very famous stairs that were in a 1919 silent film by Laurel and Hardy, and they're lined with guava trees. They're municipal. In other words, they're city space. Here's a sidewalk with a grapevine, a peach tree, and a loquat tree right next to each other and growing into each other. Here is an archetypally Los Angeles kind of fruit. This is a peach tree, planted on the median. We call this drive-by fruit because you can pick it without having to leave your car. You just reach out the window. Here's a very, very delicious fig tree near my house, growing quite over the sidewalk, as you can see in the street. Here's a photo we staged ourselves, and it's the photo that talks about public and private questions. Half this, as you see the fence line there, and you see some figs are hanging into the public space, and some, with my collaborator's hand, that one fig is half in public and half in private space. Whose fig is that? We often, when we take people on tours, we say that ethically we would cut half the fig off and leave the other half for the homeowner. So this is fallen fruit. You find this all over the world. It's actually very high quality fruit. It doesn't look that way in this green, ugly image, but it's organic almost always. It's completely neglected. It's usually been planted by someone who lived there before the current owner. This is, sorry, these pictures are so beautiful, but this is a persimmon sort of squashed on the ground beside a persimmon tree, very delicious fruit. We take people on tours through these neighborhoods. We take them at night. Specifically, this was a group of about 120 people. You won't see all of them. We go with shopping carts and fruit pickers. We wear our little outfits, and we show people the fruit, and we pose the question, whose banana is this banana? Who is the public? What is the public space used for? What else might it be used for other than what we call useless ornamental horticulture, which is what most cities are planted with. Delicious avocados. You know, happy Scandinavians receiving delicious avocados. So here's this object we're very interested, this object called public fruit. And here's this other subject we're interested in called the public. There are many kinds of public. We do these tours in the evening because we also meet the homeowners. They often say to us, the first thing they say is that edible? And we say, yes, it's an apple tree. Have one. And then other times they ask us to pick it. They say it's too much for us because if you know fruit trees, they yield a lot. So please pick my tree. And often they invite us into their backyards because they have another fruit tree. So 100 people go into the backyard and pick the tree bare. We also do what we call public fruit tree adoptions, where these trees are donated by Tree People Los Angeles, whose goal is to serve underserved communities and improve the greenscape, but also they have a fruit tree giveaway program that is given that we are one of the intermediaries for distributing these fruit trees. We do this once a year. This is our form. They didn't ask for this. But we talk to people a lot when we do these adoptions, and we wanted them to understand that it was a relationship. It was a relationship that they were agreeing to, especially in Los Angeles, where water is a recurring problem. The tree needs to be watered for 3 years. We try very hard to only plant things that are drought tolerant. People are very happy to get these trees. This is a fruit tree adoption in Watts, California, very famous for riots in 1965, and then after the Rodney King uprising in 1992. When we arrived at Watts Towers, that's not showing correctly, but it's how to plant a fruit tree. No, that shouldn't be there. When we arrived at Watts Towers Projects, the African-American woman who runs it we said, well, we want to talk to people about planting these trees either on public space near their house or on the perimeter. This is our thing about the perimeter, why the perimeter is so important. And she said, honey, we're 3 white boys. She said, honey, you don't understand this neighborhood. No one is going to plant anything in public. And remarkably, we got a very enthusiastic response for people who really did understand what we were talking about. We've thought about these planting schemes a lot. So in Madrid 2 years ago, we've tried to arrange the planting of fruit trees in public many times. This was the first time it was going to work. So we had these trees that the picture's disgusting, but it looked beautiful because these trees were in the middle of a gallery. They started to bloom halfway through the show, so it was just a little like magical forest of fruit trees. We were supposed to plant them in unused parts of the neighborhood of the Matadero in Madrid. We were stopped by the city government and particularly by the Minister of Culture, who was the ex-president's wife, who was a very conservative, and she didn't want this done. So these trees were stranded at the gallery until they were adopted by this community garden, and this is something we're very interested in, this kind of space. There's the trees last year. We're very interested in these mostly when the word community garden means it's like a little graveyard where everyone has their plot, and it's actually very privatized. We're trying to work with notions of communal gardens where everyone participates, everyone owns everything equally, and they have to negotiate the use. How do I make this reactivate? I need my notes. Sorry, technology. As we've been working on this, we were very interested in ideas of the commons, and we realized that the commons, though, is an appealing category, but we also found this other category, which comes from Roman law, and it's the word usufruct on the bottom. Usufruct is the right to enjoy the use and advantage from property that either belongs to another person or which is under common ownership, as long as the property is not damaged or destroyed. It obviously has parallels to a great deal of what's been talked about here in terms of housing. We also make these images, and this is a set from 2006 where we sort of saw ourselves. There's a whole series of projects that happened in the 1930s in the United States called the Work Projects Administration, where unemployed people were put to work to build some of the most beautiful architecture, public, walkways in public parks, Appalachian National Park. So we modeled ourselves after that. It was also there were a lot of war pictures coming in, so we redid the raising of the flag over Iwo Jima. This is one of the most famous historical images because it was actually staged. The photograph did not capture the event. The photograph was staged after the event to become the icon that it is. So all these photographs are very manufactured in the sense that they're heavily photoshopped. The landscape behind us is not actually, that's Elysian Park, which is a very, very urban park in the middle of LA that is very poorly maintained and is always being chipped away by the cities. They built the baseball field there, Dodger Stadium. They keep taking away this park for really privatized use, and that's one of the rather poor neighborhoods in LA in the background. Here's another series from 2008. This is City Hall in Los Angeles, currently the site of Occupy Wall Street, way down at the end of that plaza, in front of that building, which is City Hall. We decided that this was in a period where there was very little protest. We decided we would become protesters. We're wearing hazmat suits, hazardous material suits, which are for very toxic environments to go in and clean up usually. We took our faces out, and then we built these boards so that people could stand there and protest with the least required amount of effort. All you had to do was put your face in the square. The City Hall, it's not in this photograph, but we had a bunch of other protest signs from, we worked with the Center for Political Graphics in LA, which has one of the world's biggest collections, international collections of political graphics, from labor issues to civil rights to war, anti-war, and they kindly gave us a lot of their posters that they had extra ones of. So we had all these posters that people could also photograph themselves in front of City Hall, protesting whatever it is they wanted to protest, as well as these blank things with erasable marker, so they could do whatever they wanted. 2 minutes. The last thing I'm going to talk about is we do these public fruit jams, and it's a very key part of our work. We harvest this fruit from the street. We invite the public to participate. This is in an art gallery. We do not work with recipes. All the jam is made collaboratively. In other words, if I had brought lemons and you had brought if I had brought lemons and you had brought figs and a third person had bought lavender, we'd make fig, lavender, tangerine jam. We often get people to work together who do not know each other, so it's strangers making jam together. These were strangers once. So the cooking happens. We do this once a year at least. We've done it all around the world, and it gets bigger and bigger. It's moved out into the street in our site in LA, which is Machine Project. So we've really taken over the block. One of the things that in this kind of public work that we do, we have understood that whatever the public is something that is also constantly being created, and that's really, for us, the incredible power of public art making. You make and remake the public endlessly, and it has an incredible liberatory dynamic. The question about who is the public, very quickly. So we produce this jam, it's delicious, it's beautiful, it has aesthetic qualities. We don't think of this as the work, it's the byproduct of the work. We've done a lot of work around the world with our object, with our fruit object. This thing you are seeing in front of you is not a natural object, it's a cultural object. It is the result of thousands of years of human nature collaboration. The fruit we eat would not exist without us. We find it a very useful object. It's also a colonial object. This was shot near the site of 1928, the United Fruit riots, banana massacre in Colombia, where an untold number of people, of workers, banana workers, were shot who were striking for better rights. It's the only time that we know of that people were killed for fruit. It's one of the reasons we wanted to go there, but we also, it's an ongoing project called the Colonial History of Fruit, and we keep working on it because it has, it's endless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias, for a very sweet and fruitful presentation. One question. Occupy LA, you talked to me about it yesterday. Yeah. It moved you. What moves you about it?
It relates to what people have been talking about earlier. I've been involved in protest movements of different kind most of my life, from anti-war when I was young with my parents, to AIDS activism, to clinic defenses in Los Angeles. What I have come to understand that I did not understand before is that all of these things, while worthy and important, we're dealing with 2%, 4%, 5% of the problem. I feel like the Occupy movement is dealing with, I don't want to even weigh it with a percentage, but far, far more than I've ever seen any public group contend with. So it fills me with optimism, and I've in fact done nothing for the last 2 months but go to 6 weeks rather to Occupy LA, and I was in London, I visited Occupy London and Occupy Amsterdam.
But you also said, look, your interest is largely also aesthetic, I think, clearly.
Partially.
How does it relate, the activist in you and the artist?
We often we do a lot of art events. We're all from an art background. We're from two of us are from what you call a critical art background, where this doesn't fit because, in some sense, all we're doing is playing, and I don't say that with any shame, but every time we're in front of a group of artists, we actually remind them that we're really activists, or we're also activists. Whenever we're in front of a group of activists speaking about our work, we often say, you know what? We're not really activists, because we're not. We're really bad activists. This work is rotten activism. It's, you know what I mean? Well, activists are very good at what they do, right? And we love those activists and we work with them, but that gap, right, of being the activist in the art world and the artist in the activist world, I think is, without claiming all the pitiful privilege of the artist in relation to activism, very important to us to work on that distinction.
But does art have to can it play a role in this transition to, because really, I mean, we're talking about, I think the main thing in all of these presentations is values. It's a different value system. It's not a new value system. It's a very common value system that many people hold, but to re-emphasize it, to find new forms for it. Is that where artists and architects can play a role?
Well, that's a huge question. I think Martha Rossler kind of started on it this morning and did better than I will do with it. I see play as such a powerful thing. I always have, but I see right now, I see the play that goes on in the Occupy movements, the unwillingness in a certain way to be productive and to make a clear list of 10 statements. Right, it's just intense, and I at the moment, I think I and my collaborators are very focused on our role as maybe even clowns.
Thank you. May I invite the other participants? Because I think what stuck in my mind is what Amalia said. If you can come here, and I think maybe we can discuss one question on the stage together and then take 2 questions from the audience. Because the one thing I think that is most pressing, if I take the whole day into account, is what Amalia said. If we see these values and we see that out of these values a new economic culture can emerge, maybe at this moment today the question is, you asked the question, can also a new politics emerge from these new values or old values, but different values than are shaping our politics today? Is that possible? And what should we do to make that possible? So I would really like to hear from each of you a brief reflection on that, because I think that is the one thing maybe that we are all kind of facing today, because it's great to put the tents and to stay, but then what? So maybe Amalia Cardenas, because you asked the question so eloquently and you showed us the values, and I think many of us recognize them.
Yeah, I have the question, but I don't have the answer, because I've been, with Manuel, we've been working for the past 2 weeks on a project, how the internet is shaping the public sector, and the more I read about it, I keep seeing how the public sector and governments are failing to represent people, and it gets me more and more angry each week that I read about it. But it fills me with a lot of optimism to have things in Occupy Wall Street, things in Barcelona, things in all of the Arab revolutions, and I think at least this is the first time that I have felt that things could really change. And I don't have the answer, but I think it will come from people self-organizing and putting their little pieces of the puzzle together.
But will we need new institutions eventually, or can we do without?
New institutions, yes, I think.
Maybe, huh?
Can I just...
yeah, what about you, Matthias?
We began with the question of property, and we endlessly returned to it, and I think the definition of property, such as it is, the unwieldy definition of property, is really a core part of this current moment of crisis in capitalism. Someone earlier said that, you know, wherever there's money, there's capitalism. The problem is not money. Money is very useful. It's a way that you and I can exchange something without having the goods. You know what I mean? It's the accumulation of capital, right? And it's the capitalization of property. That's really, you know, and the privatization of all property. So to me, some of the most important institutions that need to be thought through are institutions or forms of property that do not resemble the current forms that we have today.
You mean barter?
I imagine there may be forms we don't know, we haven't imagined yet. I hope so. But of course.
Laura?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on, I think it was Manuel earlier who talked about parallel systems. I have a belief that we're not going to have a revolution per se, the way, you know, revolutions happened in the past. I really feel like it's up to us to create a new system and create new rules and almost disregard the system that's in place, because fighting it somehow just, you know, causes more fighting, and instead we can create a kind of a subcultural system that eventually takes up more and more space and maybe one day replaces the old system.
Because you bought a house cheaply with a lot of land in Los Angeles that was foreclosed, right? A house that was foreclosed and enabled you, in a way, because of the crisis, you were able to start a commune there.
Right. Right. So if I were to fight the system, then, you know, I couldn't do that in a sense, because
you would lose.
I would just, I don't know, be homeless or something, you know.
I think we need to fight the system, and I think we need to fight the system, and I'm willing to put my body out there with the occupiers and elsewhere.
Joana, last.
If we want to mix culture with politics, I think that if we really want new politics, we have to pay more attention in how we do things, not in what we want. I think it's the only way to change politics. Mm-hmm. And when I say how we do things, I mean to start to work in a participative way. And I think it's a good way to change politics.
But to make decisions by consensus takes a very long time.
Yes, but there's a lot of other methodologies. Consensus is just one, and I think it's the worst. I don't like consensus, but there's a lot of participatory methodologies that we don't know very well because they're really innovative, and there's a lot of ways to make decisions in collective without consensus and with using low time.
I think it's also a field that has not been practiced much, so that's why it's so difficult for many of us to make consensus decisions or group decisions, and it's maybe something we should start focusing on more and really learning how to do that.
Thank you. Just no consensus, but maybe 2 questions. Haak?
Or consensus, no?
Yeah.
I have a question. Since we're on the topic of activism, I think a word that we haven't heard much today is the notion of authenticity. And I'd like to raise this, actually I have 2 questions. One is for Matthias, one is for Laura. Matthias, in your presentation, the way that I interpret, or I interpreted your presentation, there's this dealing with this notion of authenticity, showing people that there is fruit, that there is actually something natural in their surroundings, that is authentic as such. And by making that visible, you engage in a kind of activism. You could say that that's romantic, even, in a way. I'm using that now, and I'd like to hear your reaction to it. What I think is interesting, in the birth of Romanticism, it happened in a time just before a first set of revolutions took place in what was later to become a modern world. I'm wondering if you see that this Romanticism, both in your practice and perhaps on a larger scale in the Occupy movements, is something that you can. What do you think of actually that statement? Can you find yourself in that? And my other question is for Laura, in the notion of this idea of authenticity and activism. You mentioned in your presentation casual activism. I'm very curious what that is.
That's a terribly complicated question, and I'll give a very fast answer. I'm also an academic. I see Romanticism as a response to the Enlightenment. It's about the rise of the individual, and Romanticism is really about the individual who becomes utterly unaffiliated with the group. So I do see the romanticism, you know, we're courting it, right? We're courting in our work, there's a seduction of the image, you know, so maybe that's not romantic, but I think it is. There's the question of the sublime. We work often with the relationship between what is very ordinary, right, which is fruit, but also very extraordinary, the fruit as a symbol, right, and in particular, the apple in the Garden of Eve, you know, the symbol of the knowledge of good and evil, and that's what's caused all our problems. What you didn't see in that work is that we're very attentive to what I would call guest-host relationships. They are really implicit right now, sitting here, right, we're guests. There are hosts, there are guests. We all have very complex guest-host relationships. They particularly apply in food and in feeding each other or not feeding each other. So we do workshops where we've actually, you know, had people like who don't know each other feed each other pieces of fruit. It's a really difficult, intensely emotional and intimate thing. So.
Okay.
I'm rambling, but you know, romanticism is you know, seductive. I'll say that, but it's not the answer.
Briefly, Laura, the casual activist.
Casual activist. I think it's a huge untapped source of activists. There's a lot of activists, or most activists today, they have to be full on 100% committed to that life. And not many people can do that. Many people do have to have a job and make an income because they have families and they have rents to pay and whatnot. And it's pretty hard to be a full-time activist and do all those things. Yet a lot of these people actually may not be totally satisfied with what they're doing in their job, or may have a lot of energy that they're not expressing, creative, passionate energy. And I think it's a huge untapped source, and that's kind of what I'd like to tap into.
Thank you. One last question.
I'm so pleased because the references to fruit growing, cultivation, the rural and agriculture, the social is not an urban monopoly. And I think within the farming and rural sector, there are similar struggles. So the neo-social is not an exclusively urban discourse. Food, fertility, human fertility, and agriculture are also part of the struggle.
Thank you all very, very much for your inspiring presentations. I think we will continue the search for the new politics organically. And just also to say goodbye to the collective, I play the last clip while we change for the next presentation. Thank you.